The crack of a pistol echoed through the dusty streets of Snake River, Idaho. As Olivia Owens pressed her back against the rough wooden siding of the general store, her heart hammering against her ribs like a wild Mustang. It was 1872, and at 20 years old, she had just discovered the unthinkable. Her stepfather had drawn up papers to sell her at auction, like a prize heifer, to settle his mounting gambling debts. Olivia clutched the crumpled notice she'd found in her stepfather's desk drawer, the paper trembling in her fingers. 3 days. She had 3 days before Jasper Preston would parade her before the men of Snake River and surrounding territories as prime marriage stock. The thought made bile rise in her throat. Her mother had been gone barely 6 months, the consumption taking her swiftly last winter, and already Jasper was disposing of what he considered his property. The April wind whipped her copper hair across her face as she stuffed the notice into the pocket of her faded blue dress. She had to think, had to find a way out of this nightmare. Escape seemed the only option, but with barely $2 to her name and no family to turn to, where would she go? "You all right, Miss Owens?" The deep voice startled her, and she spun around to find Daniel Kincaid watching her with concern in his storm-gray eyes. "Mr. Kincaid," she breathed, hastily wiping away the tears that had formed without her noticing. "Yes, I'm quite fine, thank you." Daniel Kincaid was new to Snake River, arriving just a month past from somewhere in Montana Territory. He ran cattle on the parcel of land he'd purchased from Old Man Wilson, and though he kept mostly to himself, the town buzzed with rumors about him. Some said he'd been a lawman up north. Others whispered that he'd ridden with outlaws. All Olivia knew was that he tipped his hat to her respectfully whenever they crossed paths, and he never leered at her the way some men did. "Begging your pardon, but you don't look fine," Daniel said, his voice gentle despite his imposing frame. He stood over 6 feet tall, with broad shoulders honed by years of hard work. His dark brown hair fell just past his collar, and a short beard shadowed his jaw. "Is there something I can help with?" Olivia hesitated. She'd learned early in life that men rarely offered help without expecting something in return. But there was something in Daniel Kincaid's eyes, a steadiness, an honesty that made her want to trust him. "I doubt anyone can help with this," she said finally, her voice barely audible over the sounds of the busy main street. Daniel glanced around, noticing the curious looks from passers-by. "Perhaps we could talk somewhere less public. The cafe serves decent coffee." Against her better judgment, Olivia found herself nodding. What did she have to lose, really? In 3 days, she'd be sold to the highest bidder unless she found a way out. The cafe was nearly empty at this hour, the lunch crowd gone and the dinner rush not yet begun. They sat in a corner booth, and Daniel ordered coffee for them both from Mrs. Hollister, the owner's wife. "Now," he said once they were alone, "what's troubling you so?" Olivia's fingers wrapped around the warm mug, drawing strength from its heat. "My stepfather," she began, her voice low, "has arranged to sell me at auction." The words felt impossible even as she spoke them. Daniel's expression darkened. "I beg your pardon." With trembling hands, Olivia withdrew the notice from her pocket and slid it across the table. Daniel unfolded it, his jaw tightening as he read. "This can't be legal," he muttered. But they both knew that in territories like Idaho, the law was often what powerful men decided it was. And Jasper Preston, as the town's only banker, held considerable sway. "My mother married him 5 years ago when my father died," Olivia explained. "She thought she was securing our future. When she passed this winter, everything became his, including me, apparently." She attempted a smile that failed miserably. "He owes money to some men from Boys." "Dangerous men, from what I gather." Daniel's fingers tapped a slow rhythm on the table as he considered her words. "Do you have family elsewhere? Someone who might take you in?" Olivia shook her head. "No one. My father's family disowned him when he married my mother." She was half Shoshone, she added, lifting her chin slightly as if daring him to judge her for her heritage. If Daniel was surprised by this revelation, he didn't show it. The copper tones in her skin and the high cheekbones that had come from her mother's side were beautiful to him, though he kept this thought to himself. "I have $7 saved," she continued. "I thought perhaps I could try to reach Oregon, find work as a teacher or seamstress. But it's not enough for the stage fare and traveling alone." She trailed off, knowing the dangers a young woman faced on the frontier. Daniel handed the notice back to her, his expression grave. "Miss Owens, what your stepfather is attempting is despicable. I won't pretend to know all the legal particulars, but I suspect there's little that can be done through official channels before the auction date." He paused, seeming to weigh his next words carefully. "I might have a solution, but I don't want to presume." Olivia waited, hope and wariness warring within her. "The auction is set for Saturday at noon," he said, tapping the paper. "I could attend and outbid the others." Olivia's heart sank. Was he just like the rest after all? "And what would you expect in return, Mr. Kincaid?" she asked coldly. Daniel's eyes widened as he realized how his offer had sounded. "No, Miss Owens, you misunderstand. I have no intention of claiming any rights over you. I would purchase the contract and immediately tear it up. You would be free to go wherever you please, do whatever you wish." Olivia stared at him, searching for any sign of deception. "Why would you do that for a woman you barely know?" A shadow passed over Daniel's face. "Let's just say I've seen what happens when good people are treated as property. I couldn't live with myself if I stood by and allowed it to happen again." There was a story there, Olivia sensed, but now wasn't the time to press for details. "That's very generous, Mr. Kincaid, but I couldn't accept such charity." "It's not charity," he insisted. "It's basic human decency. Besides," he added with a slight smile that transformed his solemn face, "I've been looking to put Jasper Preston in his place since he tried to overcharge me for my land purchase." Despite everything, Olivia found herself smiling back. "He does have a talent for making enemies." "So do we have an agreement?" Daniel asked. "I attend the auction, outbid everyone, and then you're free to choose your own path." It seemed too simple, too good to be true, but what other options did she have? "Yes," she said finally, "we have an agreement. And I insist on repaying you, however long it takes." Daniel looked like he wanted to argue but instead nodded. "If that makes you more comfortable. Now, until Saturday, you should continue as normal. Don't give your stepfather any reason to suspect you know about his plans." Olivia agreed, though the thought of facing Jasper Preston across the dinner table for the next 3 nights made her stomach turn. As they parted ways outside the cafe, Daniel hesitated. "Miss Owens, if things become difficult at home before Saturday, if you feel unsafe for any reason, my foreman's wife, Martha, stays at my ranch house. You'd be welcome there." Olivia thanked him, touched by his concern, but certain she could endure 3 more days in the house she'd called home for 5 years. She'd survived Jasper's cold indifference and occasional verbal cruelty before. She could do it again knowing freedom awaited. What she didn't anticipate was that Jasper would announce her impending marriage prospects over dinner that very night. "I've arranged a beneficial situation for you, Olivia," he said, cutting into his roast beef with precise movements. At 53, Jasper Preston was still a handsome man, with silver at his temples and a carefully trimmed mustache. It was his eyes that revealed his true nature, cold and calculating as a snake's. "Have you?" Olivia managed, forcing herself to continue eating though each bite threatened to choke her. Indeed, several prominent gentlemen have expressed interest in taking you as a wife. I've arranged for them to present their offers on Saturday." He smiled thinly. "You should be grateful. Not many girls with mixed blood find respectable husbands." Olivia set down her fork, no longer able to maintain the pretense of appetite. "And do I have any say in this arrangement?" Jasper's smile vanished. "Your mother left you in my care, girl. I'm doing what's best for you, and what's best is for you to be properly settled before you bring shame upon yourself and this household." "What shame would that be exactly?" Olivia asked, unable to keep the edge from her voice. Jasper's hand slammed down on the table, rattling the dishes. "Don't play innocent with me. I've seen how you look at that half-breed who delivers firewood, and the way you smile at customers in the bank. You're your mother's daughter. All right, she always had an eye for men beneath her station." Olivia bit her tongue, knowing that defending her mother would only provoke him further. "May I be excused?" she asked instead, her voice tight with suppressed rage. Jasper waved a dismissive hand. "Go, and wear your blue dress on Saturday. It's the only one that makes you look somewhat presentable." Olivia retreated to her room, closing the door softly despite her desire to slam it. She pressed her forehead against the cool glass of her window, staring out at the stars emerging in the darkening sky. 3 days suddenly felt like an eternity. The next morning, Olivia went about her usual routine, helping Mrs. Garcia, the housekeeper, with breakfast, then walking to the small library where she volunteered 3 days a week. The familiar tasks helped calm her nerves, though each time the library door opened, she startled, half expecting to see Jasper coming to drag her away. By mid-afternoon, the library was empty except for Olivia and Mrs. Winters, the elderly librarian who dozed more often than she read these days. Olivia was shelving returned books when the door opened, bringing with it a gust of spring air and Daniel Kincaid. "Mr. Kincaid," she said, nearly dropping the book in her hands. "I didn't expect to see you here." Daniel removed his hat, revealing hair still damp from a recent washing. He was dressed in clean clothes, not fancy, but a far cry from the dusty work clothes she usually saw him in. "Miss Owens, I hoped I might find you here." Mrs. Winters stirred at her desk, peering at them over her spectacles before apparently deciding nothing improper was occurring and closing her eyes again. "Is something wrong?" Olivia asked quietly, moving toward a corner where their conversation wouldn't disturb the dozing librarian. "No, nothing's wrong," Daniel assured her. "I just wanted to let you know that everything is arranged for Saturday. I've been to the bank today, withdrew enough cash to handle any bidding that might occur." Relief washed over Olivia. "Thank you, Mr. Kincaid. I know I've said it before, but I truly don't know how I can ever repay such kindness." Daniel shrugged, looking almost embarrassed. "No need for thanks. I also wanted to ask, has your stepfather said anything about the auction to you?" Olivia nodded grimly. "Last night. He presented it as a marriage opportunity, of course, not an outright sale." Daniel's expression hardened. "The man has no shame. He claims to be acting in my best interest," Olivia said with a bitter laugh. "Protecting me from my own base instincts, apparently." Your Daniel stopped himself, a flush creeping up his neck. "Forgive me. That's not my business." Olivia felt her own cheeks warm. "He imagines impropriety where there is none, Mr. Kincaid. It's merely another justification for what he wants to do anyway." An awkward silence fell between them, broken when Daniel cleared his throat. "Well, I should let you get back to your work. I just wanted to assure you that everything is in hand for Saturday." As he turned to leave, Olivia found herself reluctant to see him go. "Mr. Kincaid," she called softly. "Perhaps." Perhaps you might check out a book while you're here. Mrs. Winters would be pleased to see the library being used. Daniel glanced at the shelves uncertainly. I'm afraid I'm not much of a reader, Miss Owens. Ranch work doesn't leave much time for books. Everyone should make time for books, Olivia replied, moving toward a nearby shelf. They're windows to worlds we might never see otherwise. She selected a volume and held it out to him. This one has short stories. You could read just one at a time whenever you have a moment. Daniel accepted the book, their fingers brushing briefly in the exchange. Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, perhaps, or something warmer. Thank you. I'll give it a try. After he left, Olivia found herself touching the fingers that had brushed against his, a curious sensation spreading through her chest. She pushed it aside firmly. Daniel Kincaid was being kind, nothing more. Once Saturday passed, she would be free to pursue her plans to leave Snake River behind. Developing any sort of attachment would be foolish. The following day passed in excruciating slowness. Jasper insisted Olivia accompany him to various businesses around town, introducing her to men who eyed her like a prized mare. She endured their appraising looks with a fixed smile, consoling herself with the knowledge that none of them would succeed in their bids. By Friday, rumors of the auction had spread throughout Snake River. Olivia could feel the stares as she walked to the general store, could hear the whispers that fell silent as she approached. Some looked at her with pity, others with barely disguised interest. She kept her head high, though inside she was crumbling with humiliation. Leaving the store with her purchases, Olivia nearly collided with Ruth Miller, the banker's daughter and the closest thing Olivia had to a friend in Snake River. "Olivia," Ruth exclaimed, steadying her. "I was just coming to find you." Ruth was a pretty girl of 19 with blonde curls and a perpetually sunny disposition that sometimes wore on Olivia's nerves but was welcome today. "What's wrong, Ruth? You look worried." Ruth glanced around before pulling Olivia into the space between buildings. "Is it true what people are saying about your stepfather arranging marriages for you?" Olivia sighed. "It's true he's determined to see me married, yes. But they're saying it's to be an auction." Ruth's blue eyes were wide with shock. "Surely that can't be right." Olivia couldn't bring herself to lie to her friend. "It's complicated, Ruth, but I believe things will work out." Ruth squeezed Olivia's hand. "Papa says it's disgraceful what Jasper Preston is doing. He wanted to intervene, but your stepfather apparently has some documents that make it all legal or legal enough that Papa wasn't sure he could stop it." "It's all right," Olivia assured her, though of course it wasn't. "I have a plan." "A plan? What kind of plan?" "Olivia, you're not thinking of running away, are you? It's dangerous out there for a woman alone." Olivia smiled slightly. "I'm not planning to run, no, but I'm not going to be sold to some stranger either. Trust me, Ruth." Ruth didn't look convinced. "Whatever you're planning, be careful. And know that our door is always open to you if you need refuge." The offer touched Olivia deeply. "Thank you. That means more than you know." When she returned home, Olivia found Jasper waiting for her in the parlor, a glass of whiskey in his hand, though it was barely past noon. "There you are," he said, his words slightly slurred. "I was beginning to think you'd run off." "Where would I go?" Olivia replied evenly, setting her purchases on the sideboard. Jasper studied her over the rim of his glass. "You're a strange girl, Olivia. Your mother was emotional, passionate, wearing her heart for all to see. But you keep everything locked inside. It's unsettling." Olivia said nothing, knowing from experience that engaging with Jasper when he was drinking only led to uglier confrontations. "Tomorrow's the big day," he continued when she didn't respond. "Already had 3 men come by the bank today to inquire about your qualifications." He laughed, a harsh sound that made Olivia's skin crawl. Told them you're healthy, obedient, and can cook a decent meal. What more could a man want in a wife? Olivia's nails dug into her palms as she fought to maintain her composure. If that's all, I should help Mrs. Garcia with dinner preparations. Jasper waved her away, already refilling his glass. As she left, Olivia heard him mutter, "Just like your mother, too good for the likes of us white men, eh? We'll see about that tomorrow." Dinner was a tense affair, with Jasper drinking steadily throughout the meal. By the time Mrs. Garcia served dessert, he was in a dark mood, glaring at Olivia as if she had personally offended him. "You'll be gone tomorrow," he said abruptly. "Married to whoever offers the highest bride price. Good riddance, I say." Olivia set down her fork. "May I be excused?" "No, you may not," Jasper snapped. "You'll sit there and listen to me. Your mother thought she was so clever, marrying me to secure your future. But she never loved me, not really. Always pining for that Indian-loving father of yours." "Please don't speak of my parents that way," Olivia said quietly. Jasper's hand shot out, knocking over his wine glass. Red liquid spread across the white tablecloth like blood. "I'll speak however I damn well please in my own house. Your mother left me with debts and a half-breed daughter no respectable family would welcome. Well, tomorrow I wash my hands of you." Olivia rose from the table, her legs shaky but her voice steady. "Yes, tomorrow you'll be free of your burden, and I'll be free of you." She fled to her room before he could respond, locking the door behind her. For the first time since discovering the auction notice, Olivia allowed herself to cry, not from fear of what tomorrow might bring, but from relief that, after tomorrow, she would never have to see Jasper Preston again. Sleep eluded her that night. Olivia lay awake, listening to the sounds of the house settling and Jasper's heavy footsteps as he finally retired to his room well past midnight. When dawn finally broke, she rose and dressed with care, choosing not the blue dress Jasper had commanded but her mother's cream-colored one, preserved carefully since her death. It was perhaps a small rebellion, but it gave Olivia strength as she brushed and pinned her hair, applied a touch of her mother's rosewater to her wrists, and prepared to face what would hopefully be her last day under Jasper Preston's roof. When she descended the stairs, she found her stepfather already dressed in his Sunday best, pacing the foyer impatiently. "Finally," he muttered when he saw her. "And I told you to wear the blue dress." "The blue dress has a tear in the sleeve," Olivia lied smoothly. This was the next best option. Jasper's eyes narrowed, but he apparently decided this battle wasn't worth fighting. "We leave in 10 minutes. The auction is being held at Whitman's auction house." Olivia's stomach twisted at his casual confirmation that this was, indeed, an auction rather than the respectable marriage arrangement he'd initially described. But she merely nodded, gathering her shawl and a small reticule containing the few personal treasures she couldn't bear to leave behind: her mother's cameo, her father's pocket watch, and the $7 that represented her entire savings. The walk to Whitman's auction house on the edge of town felt like a march to the gallows. People stopped to stare as they passed, some with pity in their eyes, others with undisguised curiosity. Olivia kept her gaze fixed straight ahead, refusing to acknowledge their stares. Whitman's was typically used for livestock auctions and estate sales. Today, a small crowd had gathered outside, men of various ages and stations, some from Snake River, others clearly from neighboring towns. Olivia recognized several faces: the widower Harmon with his 3 young children, Thomas Beck, the saloon owner. Even Sheriff Mills stood at the back of the crowd, his expression troubled. As they approached, the men fell silent, their eyes following Olivia as Jasper led her through the parted crowd and into the auction house. Inside, rows of chairs had been arranged facing a small platform where cattle and horses usually stood while being sold. The symbolism was not lost on Olivia, whose hands had begun to tremble despite her determination to show no weakness. "Stand up straight," Jasper hissed as more men filed in behind them. "Remember, the higher the offer, the better the situation for you." Olivia said nothing, her eyes scanning the crowd for any sign of Daniel Kincaid. Her heart sank as the seats filled and the auction start time approached with no sign of him. Had he changed his mind? Had something happened to prevent him from coming? Just as Walter Whitman, the auctioneer, stepped up to the platform, the door at the back of the room opened and Daniel Kincaid entered. His tall frame stood out among the seated men, and his eyes immediately found Olivia's, giving her a slight nod that sent relief coursing through her veins. "Gentlemen," Whitman began, clearing his throat uncomfortably, "we're here today for a unique situation. Mr. Preston has arranged for his stepdaughter's hand in marriage to be offered to the highest bidder." He glanced at Olivia apologetically before continuing. "The young lady is 20 years old, in good health, educated and skilled in household management." Murmurs ran through the crowd. Some men looked embarrassed to be participating in such an event, while others leaned forward with interest. "Miss Owens, if you would please step up to the platform," Whitman said, gesturing to the spot beside him. Olivia's legs felt like lead as she made her way to the platform. Standing before the assembled men, she felt a surge of anger that momentarily overpowered her fear. How dare they treat her as a commodity to be bought and sold? How dare Jasper reduce her mother's daughter to this? "We'll start the bidding at $50, Whitman announced. "Do I hear 50? 50, called out a voice from the back. Thomas Beck, his eyes gleaming with an expression that made Olivia's skin crawl. 75, countered another man, a stranger with a thick mustache and calloused hands. 100, said Harmon, the widower, looking more interested in her ability to care for his children than anything else. The bidding continued, rising steadily as men called out amounts. Jasper watched with growing satisfaction as the price climbed to $300, then $400. Olivia stood rigid on the platform, refusing to look at any of the bidders, her eyes fixed on a point at the back of the room where Daniel Kincaid stood silently observing. When would he bid? The price had reached $500, and still he remained silent. Had she misunderstood his intentions? Or perhaps he'd realized the cost would be too great. $525, called Sheriff Mills, surprising everyone. When people turned to look at him, he shrugged. Figure the girl deserves better than this circus. I'd tear up the contract and let her decide her own fate. A ripple of discomfort passed through the room. Some men shifted in their seats, perhaps realizing for the first time the true nature of what they were participating in. 600, countered a harsh voice. Wallace Turner, owner of the Silver Dollar Saloon in the next town over, and a man known for his cruel treatment of the women who worked for him. Olivia's blood ran cold at the thought of being bound to such a man. Do I hear 650? Whitman asked, looking increasingly uncomfortable with his role in the proceedings. There was a moment of silence, and Olivia felt despair begin to settle over her. Then, from the back of the room came a clear, strong voice. $1,000. All heads turned to see Daniel Kincaid step forward, his expression resolute as he met Jasper Preston's startled gaze. Mr. Kincaid, Whitman said, clearly surprised. Are you certain of your bid? Absolutely certain, Daniel replied, moving forward through the crowd until he stood at the front, directly before the platform where Olivia stood. $1,000 in cash, payable immediately upon acceptance of my offer. Wallace Turner scowled. 1,100, he countered. Without hesitation, Daniel responded. 1,500. A collective gasp went through the room. Such an amount was staggering for a bride price, even for the daughter of a prominent citizen, which Olivia, with her mixed heritage and no dowry, certainly was not. Turner's face darkened. "You're a fool, Kincaid. No woman is worth that much." Daniel didn't even glance in Turner's direction, his eyes fixed on Olivia's. "I disagree," he said simply. Jasper Preston, who had been watching the proceedings with growing delight, stepped forward eagerly. $1,500 is the current bid. Do I hear 1,600? Turner spat on the floor. She's not worth it. He can have her. Anyone else? Jasper looked around the room, but the other men were shaking their heads. Even the wealthiest among them wouldn't match such an extravagant sum. Very well, Whitman declared after a moment of silence. Sold to Mr. Daniel Kincaid for $1,500. Olivia felt lightheaded with relief as Daniel approached the platform, extending his hand to help her down. His touch was warm and steady, anchoring her when she felt she might float away from sheer emotion. Jasper was already pulling papers from his jacket pocket. "If you'll just sign these, Mr. Kincaid, transferring guardianship of Olivia to you with all associated rights and responsibilities." Daniel accepted the papers but didn't look at them. Instead, he reached into his own pocket and withdrew a thick envelope. "Your payment, Mr. Preston. Count it if you wish." Jasper's fingers closed greedily around the envelope. He thumbed through the bills quickly, his eyes widening at the sight of so much cash. "It's all here," he confirmed, then thrust the papers toward Daniel again. "Your signature, please." Daniel took the papers and finally turned to look at them. His expression remained impassive as he read through the document, which detailed in cold legal terms how Olivia was being transferred from one man's possession to another's. Then, to everyone's astonishment, Daniel reached into his pocket, withdrew a match and struck it against the side of the platform. Before anyone could stop him, he held the flame to the corner of the papers. "What are you doing?" Jasper shouted, lunging forward only to be blocked by Daniel's substantial frame. "These papers are an abomination," Daniel said calmly as the flame caught and began to devour the document. "No human being can be owned by another." As the papers burned in Daniel's hand, he finally dropped them to the wooden floor, stamping out the flame before it could spread, but not before the document was reduced to ash and charred fragments. "You've still accepted my money," Daniel continued, his voice carrying through the now silent auction house. "So our transaction is complete. But Miss Owens is not my property. She never could be. She's a free woman who can make her own choices about her future." Jasper's face had turned an alarming shade of purple. "You can't do this." The law, Daniel interrupted. "Show me the law that says a man can sell his stepdaughter like a head of cattle." "Sheriff Mills," he called over his shoulder, "is there such a law in Idaho territory?" The sheriff, who had been watching the proceedings with increasing discomfort, shook his head. "Can't say that there is, Kincaid. Fact is, I've been uncomfortable with this whole affair from the start." Jasper spluttered in rage. "But the money, consider it compensation for the years Miss Owens has served in your household without wages," Daniel replied coolly. "Now, if you'll excuse us, I believe Miss Owens has endured enough for one day." He offered his arm to Olivia, who took it gratefully, her legs still unsteady beneath her. As they moved toward the door, the crowd of men parted, many of them unable to meet Olivia's eyes now that Daniel's actions had forced them to confront the ugliness of what they'd participated in. Outside, the spring sunshine seemed impossibly bright after the dimness of the auction house. Olivia took a deep breath of fresh air, feeling as though she'd been underwater for a long time and had finally surfaced. "Are you all right?" Daniel asked, his voice gentle now that they were away from the crowd. Olivia nodded, though in truth she felt as if she might shatter into 1,000 pieces at any moment. "Thank you," she managed. "What you did in there was the only decent thing to do," Daniel finished for her. "I'm sorry you had to endure that spectacle at all." Behind them, the auction house door banged open, and Jasper Preston emerged, his face still flushed with anger. "This isn't over, Kincaid," he shouted. "And you," he pointed at Olivia, "don't think you can come crawling back when your situation becomes desperate." Daniel turned, placing himself between Olivia and her stepfather. "Mr. Preston," he said, his voice dangerously quiet, "I suggest you take your money and go home. Miss Owens won't be crawling back, as you put it, because she has friends who care about her welfare." Jasper looked as though he might say more, but something in Daniel's stance, or perhaps the fact that a small crowd of townspeople had gathered to watch the confrontation, made him think better of it. With a final glare, he clutched his envelope of money and stalked away toward the bank. "What happens now?" Olivia asked once Jasper was out of earshot. Daniel released a breath, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. "Now, Miss Owens, you decide. As I promised, you're free to go wherever you wish, do whatever you choose." Olivia looked around at the town that had been her home for 5 years. In some ways, Snake River had never truly accepted her, the half-Shoshone daughter of a white father who had scandalized the community by marrying an Indian woman. Yet it was the only home she knew now that her parents were gone. "I still want to repay you," she said firmly. $1,500 is an enormous sum." Daniel shook his head. "I told you before that's not necessary." "It is to me," Olivia insisted. "My parents raised me to pay my debts. I won't begin my new life by ignoring that principle." Daniel studied her for a moment, seeming to recognize the determination in her eyes. "Very well, if that's what you wish." They stood in awkward silence for a moment, both acutely aware of the curious stares of passers-by. "Miss Owens." Ruth Miller came hurrying down the street, her blonde curls bouncing with each step. "Oh, Miss Owens, I just heard what happened at the auction. Is it true that Mr. Kincaid burned the papers right in front of everyone?" Olivia couldn't help but smile at her friend's breathless excitement. "It is true, yes." Ruth turned adoring eyes to Daniel. "How wonderfully romantic, like something from a novel." Daniel shifted uncomfortably under her admiring gaze. "It wasn't romance, Miss Miller, it was basic decency." "Even better," Ruth declared. "Olivia, you must come stay with us." "Papa said so this morning when we heard about the auction. He was furious with Jasper Preston but didn't know how to stop it legally." Olivia felt a wave of gratitude for the Miller's kindness. "Thank you, Ruth. That's a very generous offer. Then it's settled." Ruth linked her arm through Olivia's. "You'll come home with me now, and we'll send for your things later. Jasper Preston can just stew in his own meanness." Olivia looked uncertainly at Daniel, who nodded encouragingly. "The Millers are good people," he said. "You'll be safe there while you decide what comes next." Something like disappointment flickered in Olivia's chest at his words. Had she expected him to offer her a place at his ranch again? That had been before the auction, when he'd been concerned for her immediate safety. Now that danger had passed. "Thank you again, Mr. Kincaid," she said formally, trying to mask the conflicting emotions swirling within her. "I won't forget what you did today." Daniel touched the brim of his hat. "It was my honor, Miss Owens. Good day to you both." As he walked away toward where his horse was tethered outside the general store, Olivia felt Ruth squeeze her arm excitedly. "Did you see the way he looked at you?" Ruth whispered. "That man is smitten, Olivia." Olivia shook her head, though her cheeks warmed at the suggestion. He's simply a good man doing a kind thing, Ruth. Nothing more. Ruth looked unconvinced but didn't press the issue as they made their way to the Miller home, a comfortable two-story house near the center of town. Mr. Miller, a distinguished gentleman with kind eyes and Ruth's same blonde hair gone mostly to gray, welcomed Olivia warmly, assuring her she could stay as long as she needed. "That stepfather of yours should be run out of town for what he tried to pull," Mr. Miller declared over dinner that evening. "If it weren't for the bank's importance to the community, I'd start a petition myself." "Edward," Mrs. Miller cautioned, glancing at Olivia with concern. "It's all right," Olivia assured her. "I hold no illusions about Jasper Preston's character." "Well, it's over now," Mrs. Miller said soothingly. "You're welcome here for as long as you like, dear." That night, lying in the comfortable guest bed in the Millers' home, Olivia found herself thinking of Daniel Kincaid. The way he had stood so tall and unflinching as he burned those papers, declaring her freedom before the entire town. No man had ever done anything remotely like that for her before. Ruth's words echoed in her mind. That man is smitten. Was it possible? Or was Daniel simply the kind of man who would have done the same for any woman in her situation? Sleep came eventually, and with it dreams of a tall figure with storm-gray eyes, reaching out a hand to lead her away from darkness into light. The following week passed in a blur of activity. Mr. Miller, true to his word, sent men to Jasper Preston's house to collect Olivia's belongings. Jasper, perhaps wary of further public scandal, did not interfere. Olivia settled into a room at the Miller's house and resumed her volunteer work at the library, grateful for the routine after so much turmoil. News of what had happened at the auction spread through Snake River like wildfire, with Daniel Kincaid's actions transformed into something almost mythical with each retelling. When Olivia encountered townspeople who had been present that day, many couldn't meet her eyes, ashamed of their participation in or silent observation of her humiliation. Others, however, seemed to view her differently now with a certain respect that hadn't been there before. Mrs. Winters at the library told her outright, "You've got more backbone than most folks gave you credit for, Miss Owens, standing up there like a queen while they tried to sell you off. And that Kincaid fellow, he's got steel in his spine, that one." Olivia thanked her, but deflected further conversation about Daniel. In truth, she hadn't seen him since the day of the auction. She told herself it was for the best what could possibly come of further interaction. Yet she found herself watching the library door, hoping each time it opened that he might appear to return the book of short stories she'd given him. On Wednesday afternoon, a week and a half after the auction, the door did open to reveal Daniel Kincaid, holding the book in his hands. Olivia's heart performed an odd little skip in her chest at the sight of him. "Mr. Kincaid," she greeted him, conscious of Mrs. Winters's curious gaze. "How nice to see you again." Daniel removed his hat, revealing hair that had been recently trimmed. "Miss Owens, I've come to return the book you recommended." He placed it on the counter between them. "I finished the last story this morning." Olivia blinked in surprise. "You read the entire collection?" A slight smile softened his features. "I did. You were right, they were windows to places I've never seen. I particularly enjoyed the one about the lighthouse keeper." "Solitude by the Sea," Olivia nodded. "It's one of my favorites as well." An awkward silence fell between them, broken when Mrs. Winters loudly cleared her throat. "Miss Owens, I believe it's time for your lunch break. Why don't you show Mr. Kincaid that new shipment of books we received yesterday? I'm sure he'd find something else to his liking." Olivia shot the older woman a grateful look. "Yes, of course, if you'd like to see them, Mr. Kincaid." Daniel nodded, following her to a back corner of the small library where several crates of books sat waiting to be unpacked. "I hope you're well, Miss Owens," he said once they were relatively private. "The Millers are treating you kindly, very kindly," Olivia assured him. "They've been wonderful, and you, how are things at your ranch? Busy?" "Spring means new calves and plenty of work." Daniel paused, seeming to search for words. "I've been thinking about our agreement, your insistence on repaying the auction money." Olivia straightened. "Yes, I still intend to honor that. I've had an idea about how that might work if you're amenable." Daniel looked uncharacteristically nervous. "My housekeeper, Martha, is expecting a child and will be returning to her family in Oregon next month. I find myself in need of someone to manage the household meals, cleaning, correspondence. It's a respectable position with fair wages, and you could stay in Martha's cabin on the property." Olivia stared at him, trying to process his offer. "You want me to work for you, as your housekeeper?" "It would be a way for you to repay the debt if that's truly important to you," Daniel explained. "And it would provide you with income and a place of your own while you decide what you want for your future." Olivia considered the proposal. Working as a housekeeper wasn't what she'd imagined for herself, but it would allow her to remain in Snake River while repaying her debt to Daniel. And if she was honest with herself, the prospect of seeing him regularly held a certain appeal she wasn't quite ready to examine too closely. "I would expect no additional services," Daniel added hastily, a flush creeping up his neck. "This would be a strictly professional arrangement." "I never thought otherwise," Olivia assured him, though the implication sent a strange flutter through her stomach. "When would you need me to start?" "Martha leaves in 2 weeks. You could come out to the ranch a few days before to learn the routines." Daniel seemed to relax slightly at her positive response. "The pay is $20 a month plus room and board." It was a generous wage for a housekeeper, and they both knew it. At that rate, Olivia calculated she could repay the auction money in about 6 years, assuming she saved every penny, which wasn't realistic. Still, it was a start. "I accept your offer, Mr. Kincaid," she said, extending her hand formally. "Thank you for the opportunity." Daniel's large hand enveloped hers, warm and calloused from ranch work. "Thank you, Miss Owens. I believe this arrangement will benefit us both." As he left the library, Olivia found herself touching her hand where his had held it, just as she had that day he'd given her the book. Mrs. Winters's knowing smile when she returned to the front desk made her blush furiously. "Not a word, Mrs. Winters," she warned the older woman. "It's a business arrangement, nothing more." "Of course it is, dear," Mrs. Winters agreed, her smile suggesting she believed no such thing. "Just a business arrangement between a handsome, unmarried rancher and a beautiful, unmarried young woman. Perfectly ordinary." Olivia rolled her eyes, but she couldn't quite suppress the smile that tugged at her lips as she returned to shelving books. The Millers were less easily convinced of the arrangement's propriety when Olivia explained it that evening. Live at his ranch, alone, Mrs. Miller looked scandalized. "Olivia, dear, think of your reputation." "I won't be alone," Olivia pointed out. "There are ranch hands, and Martha will be there for the first few days to introduce me to the household routines." "Even so," Mr. Miller frowned, "people will talk. After everything that's happened, the last thing you need is more gossip." Ruth, who had been uncharacteristically quiet during the discussion, suddenly spoke up. "I think Olivia should accept the position." Her parents turned to her in surprise. "Mr. Kincaid is honorable, we all saw that at the auction," Ruth continued, "and Olivia needs to establish her independence. Besides," she added with a sly smile, "who knows where such an arrangement might lead?" "Ruth," Mrs. Miller exclaimed. "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking," Ruth defended herself. Mr. Kincaid went to extraordinary lengths to help Olivia. It's not unreasonable to think he might have personal reasons for doing so. Olivia felt her face grow hot. Mr. Kincaid is simply being kind and practical. He needs a housekeeper, and I need employment. Mr. Miller studied her for a moment. If you're certain this is what you want, Olivia, we won't stand in your way, but our door remains open to you should you ever need it. Olivia reached across the table to squeeze his hand gratefully. Thank you. Your kindness has meant the world to me these past days. Later, as Olivia and Ruth prepared for bed, Ruth perched on the edge of Olivia's bed with an expectant expression. Now, tell me the truth. Are you at all interested in Mr. Kincaid as more than an employer? Olivia busied herself with brushing her hair, avoiding Ruth's direct gaze. It doesn't matter if I am or not. He's made it clear this is a professional arrangement. Ruth rolled her eyes. Men always say such things when they're trying to be proper. But I saw how he looked at you that day in town, and I heard from Betsy at the cafe that he specifically asked about you before the auction, wanted to know if you had family or friends he could contact on your behalf. This was news to Olivia. He did? Yes. Ruth bounced excitedly. Don't you see? He was concerned for you even before he burned those papers so dramatically. That's not the action of a man who's merely being kind. Olivia set down her hairbrush, considering her friend's words. Could there be truth to them? Or was Ruth, who devoured romantic novels like candy, simply seeing what she wanted to see? Even if that were true, Olivia said carefully, it would be inappropriate to pursue anything while I'm in his employ. Ruth sighed dramatically. You're too practical sometimes, Olivia. But I suppose that's what comes of all those books you read, too much thinking, not enough feeling. Olivia threw a pillow at her friend, and soon they were both laughing, the tension of the conversation broken. But as she drifted off to sleep that night, Olivia couldn't help wondering if Ruth might be right. What if Daniel Kincaid did see her as more than a charity case or a potential employee? And more unsettling still, what if she wanted him to? The 2 weeks before Olivia was to begin work at the Kincaid Ranch passed swiftly. She continued volunteering at the library, helped Ruth with her charity work for the church, and carefully avoided Jasper Preston whenever possible. On the rare occasions when they encountered each other in town, he would turn abruptly in the opposite direction, as if the sight of her offended him. Good riddance, Ruth would mutter each time. That man deserves far worse than public humiliation for what he tried to do to you. The day before Olivia was to leave for the ranch, Ruth insisted on helping her pack her few belongings. You'll need to look your best, she declared, holding up dresses for inspection. Not that you're trying to impress anyone, of course, she added with a wink. Olivia chose not to dignify that with a response, instead carefully folding her mother's cream dress, the one she'd worn to the auction, and placing it in her trunk. Despite the painful memories associated with that day, the dress remained precious to her as one of her few connections to her mother. The next morning dawned clear and warm, a perfect late spring day. Mr. Miller had arranged for a wagon to take Olivia and her trunk to the Kincaid Ranch, which lay about 5 miles outside of town. Ruth hugged her tightly before she climbed into the wagon. Write to me, she insisted. I want to know everything that happens out there. There won't be much to tell, Olivia assured her. I'll be cooking and cleaning, not embarking on grand adventures. Ruth's smile was knowing. We'll see about that. The journey to the ranch took less than an hour. As they crested a hill, Olivia got her first view of Daniel Kincaid's property spread out below. A sturdy 2-story house painted white with green trim, a large red barn, several outbuildings, and fenced pastures where cattle grazed lazily in the spring sunshine. A stream wound through the property, lined with cottonwood trees that provided welcome shade. It was, Olivia had to admit, beautiful, far more impressive than she'd expected for a man who had arrived in Snake River just a few months ago. As the wagon pulled into the yard, Daniel emerged from the barn, wiping his hands on a cloth. He nodded to the driver before turning to help Olivia down. "Welcome to the Triple K, Miss Owens," he said formally, though she thought she detected warmth in his eyes. "I trust your journey was comfortable." "Very, thank you," Olivia replied, suddenly aware of how dusty she must look after the ride. "It's a beautiful property, Mr. Kincaid." Daniel surveyed the ranch with evident pride. "Thank you. It's coming along well, though there's still much to be done." He turned toward the house. "Martha's eager to meet you. She's prepared lunch for us all." Martha Jennings proved to be a robust woman in her 30s with a ready smile and practical manner. Her husband, Thomas, was Daniel's foreman, a taciturn man who nodded politely to Olivia before excusing himself to return to work. "Don't mind him," Martha said as she ladled stew into bowls at the large kitchen table. "He's not one for conversation, but he's a good man." Over lunch, Martha explained the routines of the household when meals were typically served, which days were best for laundry and baking, how to manage the pantry and cellar. Olivia listened attentively, already planning how she would organize her days. "Mr. Kincaid's not difficult to please," Martha assured her as Daniel stepped outside to speak with one of the ranch hands. "He eats whatever's put in front of him without complaint, keeps regular hours, and doesn't make unnecessary messes. The most particular thing about him is his coffee. He likes it strong enough to stand a spoon in." Olivia smiled at this glimpse into Daniel's habits. "I'll remember that." "The cabin where you'll stay is just behind the house," Martha continued. "It's small but comfortable, just one room with a stove for cooking and heating, plus a bed, table, and chairs. Thomas built it when we first came to work for Mr. Kincaid, and we've been quite happy there. Though I'll be glad to be near my mother when the baby comes," she added, patting her slightly rounded belly. After lunch, Martha showed Olivia around the house, a tour that revealed more about Daniel Kincaid than Olivia had learned in all their previous interactions. The furnishings were simple but of good quality, with none of the ornate excesses that many successful men favored. Bookshelves lined one wall of the parlor, filled not with decorative volumes but with well-used books on ranching, animal husbandry, and Western history, along with a surprising number of novels. "He reads more than most ranchers I've known," Martha commented, following Olivia's gaze to the shelves. "Often sits up late with a book after the day's work is done." Upstairs, there were 4 bedrooms, Daniel's at the end of the hall, a guest room, and 2 others that stood empty save for basic furniture. Olivia couldn't help wondering what plans he had for those rooms. Did he intend to marry someday? Have children to fill this large house? The thought brought an unexpected pang, and she quickly turned her attention back to Martha's instructions about linens and laundry. By the time they'd completed the tour, Olivia's head was swimming with information. Martha seemed to sense her overwhelm and patted her arm kindly. "Don't worry, dear. I've written everything down for you, and I'll be here for 3 more days before we leave. You'll get the hang of it all in no time." That evening, Olivia settled into the cabin Martha had shown her earlier. It was indeed small, but clean and well built, with curtains at the windows and a colorful quilt on the bed. As she unpacked her trunk, arranging her few possessions around the cabin, Olivia felt a curious mixture of trepidation and excitement. For the first time in her life, she was truly on her own, responsible for herself, earning her own way, beholden to no one except in the professional sense. A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Opening it, she found Daniel standing there, a lantern in his hand casting warm light across his features. "I hope you're finding everything satisfactory, Miss Owens," he said, remaining respectfully on the small porch rather than attempting to enter. "Very much so, thank you," Olivia replied. "Martha has been most helpful," Daniel nodded, seeming almost as uncertain as she felt. "Good, that's good." He shifted the lantern to his other hand. "I wanted to make sure you were comfortable, and to let you know that breakfast is typically at 6, though Martha mentioned she already told you that." "She did," Olivia confirmed, finding his slight awkwardness unexpectedly endearing. This was a different side of the man who had so confidently burned those auction papers before a crowd of onlookers. "Well then," Daniel cleared his throat, "if you need anything, don't hesitate to ask. Good night, Miss Owens." "Good night, Mr. Kincaid." As she closed the door behind him, Olivia found herself smiling. Perhaps this arrangement wouldn't be as strictly formal as she'd anticipated. The next 3 days passed in a whirlwind of activity as Martha guided Olivia through the household routines. Daniel was absent much of the time, busy with ranch work from dawn till dusk. When he did appear for meals, he was unfailingly polite but somewhat reserved, addressing most of his conversation to Thomas about ranch matters. On Martha's final evening, she and Olivia sat at the kitchen table rolling out pie dough for the next day's dessert. "You've taken to this like a duck to water," Martha observed approvingly. "Mr. Kincaid is fortunate to have found someone so capable." Olivia smiled, pleased by the praise. "I've enjoyed learning from you. I only hope I can maintain your standards after you're gone." Martha waved away her concern. "You'll do fine. Better than fine, I suspect." She leaned closer, lowering her voice though they were alone in the kitchen. "Can I give you a bit of advice, woman to woman?" Olivia nodded, curious. "Mr. Kincaid is a good man, one of the best Thomas and I have ever worked for. He's fair, honest, and generous to a fault." Martha rolled out her dough with practiced efficiency. "But he's also a man who keeps his thoughts to himself, especially when it comes to personal matters. If you're waiting for him to speak what's in his heart, you might be waiting a long time." Olivia's hand stilled on the rolling pin. "I'm not sure what you mean." Martha gave her a knowing look. "I think you do. I've seen how he watches you when he thinks no one is looking, and I've noticed you're not exactly indifferent to him either." Heat rushed to Olivia's cheeks. "Martha, no need to explain yourself to me," Martha interrupted gently. "I just wanted you to know what you're dealing with. Mr. Kincaid won't cross any lines with you as his employee. He's too honorable for that. So if something is to develop between you, you might need to be the one to take the first step." Olivia didn't know how to respond. The idea of taking a step toward Daniel Kincaid was simultaneously thrilling and terrifying. "I'm here to work," she said finally, "to repay my debt and establish my independence." Martha's smile was sympathetic. "And those are worthy goals, but they don't preclude other possibilities, do they?" She returned to her pie dough. "Just something to consider." The next morning, Olivia stood with Daniel in the yard, waving goodbye as Thomas and Martha's wagon disappeared down the road toward town. A strange quiet settled over the ranch with their departure, and Olivia was suddenly acutely aware that she was now alone with Daniel Kincaid, her employer, her rescuer, and the man who had increasingly occupied her thoughts. "Well," Daniel said after a moment, "I should get back to work. The men are moving cattle to the north pasture today." "And I should start on lunch," Olivia replied, relieved to have practical tasks to focus on. As Daniel turned toward the barn, he paused. "Miss Owens, I want you to know that if at any point you feel uncomfortable here, or if you decide this arrangement isn't suitable for you, you're free to leave. No questions asked." Olivia was touched by his consideration. "Thank you, Mr. Kincaid, but I'm sure I'll be just fine." He nodded and strode away, leaving Olivia to return to the house that was now her responsibility. As she entered the kitchen, she took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and began planning the midday meal. This was her new life, and she was determined to make the most of it, whatever that might entail.